Bob Molle, it is very good to see you, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to the Inner Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you, Paul.
It's funny. I think there's so much we're going to talk about because you have a great history in sport. Um, but conversation we had just before I clicked the record button certainly said to me that there's a synergy in feelings here. And you said something that you admitted that you're 62 years of age. I'm not that far behind you, but and you said you're never going to retire. And why that interests me is because I know so many entrepreneurs and they talk so much about retiring, and I always feel that if you may need to change what you're doing, but if your goal is to retire, you're probably doing the wrong thing with your time in the first place. So, how do you get to 62 years of age, have done all the things you've done, and go, I've no plan on retiring?
That's a loaded question, and but actually straighten that out. For I'm turning 63 pretty soon, so I'm an
Well,
old man.
I'm trying to be nice to you here.
I know. You don't have to be
You look
nice.
very
My
fresh.
wife
You look
never
very
that nice
fresh.
to me.
You're very fresh for 63, there's no doubt about it.
Well, I'm at the gym and I bike. I got bikes in all my cities that I consult in, so I like biking and things like that. But I always I reverse engineered what I was going to do. Kind of thought the process. Why would I like it? And you and I were talking about this earlier. I do things and that excited me. I never forgot that quote, and I remember reading it and said, "You'll never get bored if you're doing stuff that excites you." And once I took that upon me, getting to the Olympics and winning a medal excited me at 21 years of age. You know what I mean? So I trained like a madman. And, three things in my life that happened. There was like, kind of like, even though you're going to school, traveling all over the world at the same time. So you had to be on your academics. Plus, I was playing college football and I was Olympic national team wrestler. You're traveling, you had a million things going on. So I had to control all those variables. So at a young age, I thought it was quite uh, I was doing things different than everybody else. So that's the entrepreneurial spirit in me, and it got me excited. Then I went into pro football, got me excited. I got offered head coaching job at the university while I was playing pro football. So I was doing that, just got married and had my first kid, and you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
just kept piling it on. Yeah. So it got me excited playing pro football. Took over a new wrestling team at 25 years of age. So I was going double duty on that. And then it just spiraled. I just go, okay, that gets me excited. Okay, I got to write a new book. Okay, that gets me excited. You know what I mean? And so that probably is zest for life. And I think if I was going to give myself one compliment, I don't get them too often from my wife, but I've always been a happy person, right? Like people always say, Bob, you got good energy. You're always happy. Why are you always happy? You know what I mean? Well, I do things that get me excited, and I still got, if I got how many days left, how many years left, I want to do things. I want to be. I don't want to rust out. I want to wear out, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's just kind of common sense in that if you're going to chase life doing things that don't really turn you on, but you're doing them because A, you feel you have to do them, or B, because it's how I make a living. I mean, you're burning yourself out. This idea of doing what excites you. I mean, there's two questions that come out of that statement. The first thing is, well, the first question is, at what stage in your life did that, I mean, was there something in your life that happened that made you think this is the way I want to pursue my life, or was it all, or did you always just have this notion, I got to find out what's exciting me and just pursue that? Because it seems like a very sensible way to live, but an unusual way to live because most people don't pursue what excites them, except maybe on a Saturday or something, you know.
Yeah, and it happened quite young. I was always one of four boys, and Mom said I had energy like there wasn't anything. She'd go, you could go from one practice to the next, to the next, to the next, football practice to a hockey practice to a football practice, and you're still ready to go, right? So a bundle of energy. And she says, I think she would have said a little differently. She probably would have said if there was a fight in the neighborhood, it was Bob and someone, Bob and a brother. I was energized as a kid all the time, but the one thing I pursued was get that excited me. I wanted to try it, right, and say,
Mm,
hey, can I do it? I fail or whatever, like Olympics or whatever, football, get that. And so that was, and it's still. But when you talk about retirement, it's funny you say that because when people, it's when people, what I hear when people retire, and I'm at the age where most of my buddies have all retired, unfortunately passed away too, is they start living a life in it. They're always thinking about when they're going to retire, and
mm,
they hated what they're doing. And that's
mm,
my first thought was they don't enjoy what they're doing, right?
mm.
And they want to retire, they want to get rid of it, And I always thought, why not do something you love, and you
Yeah.
don't have to retire. It was a different thought process all the time. Like I got my own companies for 25 years. I got a consulting business, and the beautiful thing about that is I have great relationships with all the CEOs of my companies I work with. So when I go and travel, I enjoy going out for dinner with them. I enjoy,
Mm,
you know what I mean, the time we spend together. I enjoy. So it's part. I've had my consulting business for over 25 years, and then meet new people, doing public speaking. It's just all revolved around one word. If you talk about it, the happiest people in the world still have good relationships, right? And a
yeah.
lot of people, they get lonely and they retire. They phone me up all the time, uh, and they're bored, right? And I never wanted to get bored, so that's the biggest thing. I think there was the longest study on happiness came out of Harvard years ago, and it talked about the happiest people in the world after you make 70, $80,000. I think it was. It, you got a roof over your head, you got your fridge full, you got, car, whatever. And after that, if you got $7 billion or whatever, you're not any happier. The only thing that makes you happier was the degree of relationships you have. If
Mm.
people don't have good relationships still, right? They're still unhappy if you got $1 billion, and I always taking care of my relationships all the time.
I remember reading. I don't know if you know Ray Dalio. He owns Bridgewater. I think it is one of the biggest funds in the world. I think last time I checked, it was about 160 billion or something. And he was one of the founders in that. But he speaks about this idea of pursuing wealth and happiness. And his theory was that once you get to a point where you're not really that worried about money, and I say worried about money, it doesn't mean you have the Bentley or the Ferrari in the driveway, but you're paying your mortgage or your rent. You can feed your family. You can once you can provide comfortably for those essentials. And you said, is that 70, $80,000, whatever it is for family where they have a decent income, they can cover those. His belief was that you didn't get much happier after that. So he wasn't saying to people I mean, he's a billionaire. So he wasn't saying to people you shouldn't pursue to be worth millions or tens of millions or billions. He's saying you should pursue it if it's something you're passionate about doing. In other words, if you're passionate about the work and you want to build a business and it's something you love to do, then go and do it. But if you're doing it thinking that what's at the end of it is more happiness, he said it's not there, or if it is there, like it's marginal difference. And I think any of us that have, I'm not a billionaire, but any of us that have achieved any degree of success realize that once you have enough to cover those needs, uh, you're not going to find much more happiness. You're probably, in fact, I don't think I'd ever want to be that wealthy because I think it brings a lot of complexity. But it's what people pursue, and they have their ladder against the wrong wall. I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Just before I had to hang up on a buddy of mine just called me. He was my college roommate. So we met when we were 18 and we were college roommates. He lives in the States now, and but we've been buddies since we were 18 years old, wrestled together, and you know what I mean? One of my teammates, and still have that relationship where he could pick up the phone anytime and just, hey, Bob, how's it going? Hey, when are
Yeah,
you coming to visit me? And
yeah,
those long-term relationships, I cherish those things, and I think I always enjoyed the process. Like it didn't matter if it was wrestling or football or this, the relationships on it. I enjoyed the people, and people ask me when I retired from different stuff, "Don't you miss this?" Well, the biggest thing I miss, come on, it's the relationships. The getting
team.
together and you're giggling with guys. You got a belly laugh. You're laughing so hard about something that happened, and you're giggling. You remember those? What times do you remember where the belly laugh and you were laughing so hard you can't even talk? And I cherish those relationships, and I think one thing I've done good in my life is I've managed those relationships really well, and I enjoy them.
Certainly when you've been something like in the Canadian Football League and you've played at that competitive level, there must be a great camaraderie in a team like that. Um, and obviously, when we talk about retirement, obviously, you have to retire from that sport at some stage because you're just too old. But did you miss the team? I mean, that must have been, I mean, winning, etc. But did you miss the team sport when you had to move on from that?
Yeah. Did I miss it? 100%. And the reason why was just the funny times you had together when crazy things would happen on a practice
Mm,
session, a football field, the celebration. I was very fortunate. The teams I was on, we were in the championship game every other year of my whole career. So
mm,
we're a dominant team at the same time. And there's a sad part to that too. Out of my whole line, there's only out of the starting five, there's only one other guy left. They've all
wow,
passed. Yeah, and they
wow,
passed in their 40s and 50s, and
wow.
so I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah,
And a lot of people didn't take care of their health after, and that was unfortunate. And because most of the guys on the O line were well over 300 pounds, and whatever cancer, heart attacks, or whatever. That's the sad thing. But one thing I missed when I retired, my body didn't miss it because I was just sore all the time. That's probably the biggest reason I retired.
yeah,
And I enjoyed the camaraderie, no doubt. But I got it through other areas. I coached my kids. I had three kids, and coached them in football, coached them in wrestling, coached them. I was the coach for everything, organizing it. So I'd meet more parents, more of this, and kids come up to me, and now they're 25, 30. You know what I mean? Now they're doctors, lawyers. They jump on a plane, and how many times when you coach for 25 years, you jump on
wow,
a plane, they have some going somewhere in Canada, and someone will get on a plane. Hey, coach! Now I got to
yeah,
remember what team was it, what year. And now they were little, 16-year-old kids at the time, and now they're lawyers, doctors, whatever. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But it's nice rekindling all those memories. I get a kick out of it. I enjoy it. I got a zest for life still.
Yeah, but they remember you, and that's the important thing because you obviously had an impact on them.
They used to have an old saying with Coach Bob because I was a very much a person, and I shoot a very straight arrow. Was I always praise in public. I'd like to pump the tires up, build the confidence up of that, and discipline in private.
Yeah,
And if they saw a coach with his arm around someone, taking them for a walk around the field, they knew it was going to be the disciplinary one. And there
but
was a
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was going to say that's very interesting because of my experience in business. That was one of the things I adopted early as well. And I remember in the early days of the business, we were all just in one office, and I found that difficult because if there's four or five people in the office and it's a small company you're starting up, uh, it's difficult to do that correct. I mean, no one likes to be corrected in private. I think it's similar obviously between sports, but I think that's a really good piece of advice to, praise someone. We all like to be praised in front of the team, but take someone aside, have a quiet word, and then I suppose learn how to do it in a supportive way where they know they're being supported, but they're also being pointed in a way going, well, you may need to pick up on this. And whether that's pick up something on the pitch or in their business, it's the same thing, I think, because you're dealing with people.
The kids, there's an old saying I used to, do you want the good news or the bad news?
Yeah,
So if anybody, they walk up to me and 25 years later and someone, coach, do you want the good news or the bad news?
yeah,
They remember old quotes and stuff like that. And yeah, they're fun times. I enjoyed them. I just got to a stage I traveled too much with my businesses, and but I had coached football for over 25 years and quite enjoyed the camaraderie. Same thing again, with the coaches, everything. So there's a time everybody's got an expiration date, and I just went. I used to bike out to practice every day, and it got to a point where I didn't enjoy going there and sitting in the rain some nights. You know what I mean? And I just said, it's time to hand the reins down to someone else too. So, but good career, no regrets or anything like that. Like 100%. Tried to find something else, and then wrote a book, and then tried something else, and you know So it's just been one thing after the other that I've gone after, and if I'm excited, I just continue it.
Do you think when you spoke with some of your teammates in the CFL, dying very young after professional football, and you allude to the fact that maybe didn't take care of the health, but do you think they lacked purpose as well? I'm wondering, is that part of it, that it's such a huge part of your life, and then it comes to an end, and they didn't know what to do with the rest of the days?
Huge, you nailed it. Um, Funny you say that because a lot of they used to have a quote. They say back when you played pro football, because everybody would take you out for dinner. Restaurants would obviously give you free food, free booze, free whatever. Right? It was
Yeah.
you were like celebrity in the
You were a
town.
celebrity, yeah, yeah,
You're signing autographs. You're that. So there was a celebrity part of it, and they used to go when you got if you got cut. You know what I mean? Like, if you didn't go out on your own accord, I retired and it said,
yeah,
it's time. But they used to, the quote used to be going from the penthouse to the outhouse.
yeah,
You went from being on top of the world, you're signing autographs, free meals, free this, everything where you go. And if you got cut, especially on, you didn't want to get cut, you got released. And then the penthouse, and then what am I doing? And if people didn't finish their education, people didn't, they went to a bottom line, job or something like that. They were very unhappy to hit the bottle hard or drugs or whatever. A lot of people went that way. I was already doing two different. I was a head coach in that. I'd already taken another job when I retired, so the transition was
yeah.
seamless for me, and always has been because I always had another plan. I always had a plan. I was always setting up for something else. But you're bang on. Penthouse to the outhouse. That used to be the quote.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of what we spoke earlier, of having this zest and this excitement for life, that you're passionate about lots of things, you're pursuing lots of things, and when something naturally comes to an end, there's something ready that you've been working on, that you've been blossoming into, that you're going to move into, that's something else.
Yeah, and it's come pretty natural to me. There's kind of things I always thought of. I guess a hobby, kind of like the three hobbies I always had, one that makes you fit because I got bikes in all these cities across Canada. I could jump on a plane and as soon as I get off, I got a bike that I'm running around. And so something that keeps you fit, right? And it's what keeps you excited too. I always thought about, different businesses that I could get into and that. So my business, I got the good relationships. And the other thing, all my creativity, I always wanted it too. And putting up a new speaking engagement for a company and stuff, it makes me creative too. So, kind of works all different aspects of your life, right? I kind of got, I only think of three things I can't think of for it confuse me. So I make it simple.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're nurturing the mind, the body, and the soul there, really, which I think is essential. It's essential for success, and it's essential for fulfillment.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I don't have any. Uh, Writing a new book. That one just came out a few months ago, and people love the title of it. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. I had actually bought the .com, the domains for that more than 15 years ago, 2008, and
Wow. But you
I
never wrote the book.
well, I wrote a kind of a mini series of the book, and then a person came up to me and said, "Bob, you need to rewrite this in a full book." And they couldn't believe that I owned the domain because the phrase had been used. So many people had used it. I actually bought the trademark for it, and it took me 3 years of lawyers. Actually, not to my great intelligence. That was my wife that encouraged you to. Hey, you need to buy the domains. You need to. That's a great title, and you need to buy the .com, the .ca, the this,
Yeah,
and trademark. And then I go, okay, trademark's going to cost me what, 3 years of lawyering probably. She goes, it's
wow.
worth it. Get it done. So
Yeah.
yeah, the phrase has gone viral. So it's really interesting how that one's playing out too.
Yeah, when you talk about get comfortable being uncomfortable, I mean, how does that marry with pursuing something that excites you? Because it seems like if you pursue something that excites you, are you moving towards comfort? Are you? I mean, you're moving towards joy. You're moving towards something you want to do. So how does that marry with this idea of tolerating discomfort?
Great question. And what I've found out every time I push myself, and then I thought, how would I be something best in the world at, or something like that, like wrestling, right? And I found out because I was training in the Soviet Union a couple times a year back then when the gates were up. I was around a guard, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I went solo a couple of times back in the early '80s when you're traveling in the Soviet Union. People, it was unheard of where people were going in, and I was going against all their military people. You know, they got paid basically full time to be in the military to be an Olympic wrestler, right? One of their national sports, and but you're not in a comfort zone by any means. You don't know the language, you don't, right, and no one's hugging
Were
you.
you training over there or competing
Sorry,
with them? Were you training or competing?
both.
Both. Okay.
So I'd sit over there and train. And 20-year-old kid, you get a little bit of shock from Canada, the Soviet Union back in the early
Yeah.
'80s.
Big
And
time.
you're around guard, you're around, you know what I mean? And so, was it comfortable? No. But you found out how other people in the world had trained if you're going to get to that next level. And then I
Mm.
trained with the eventual, again, the relationships. I trained with the guy that I eventually lost to in the Olympic final. Him and I trained together. We're pretty. He invited me down. Good relationship with him. He was out of the States. He was the first four-time Olympic medalist ever in the sport of wrestling. So he did 84 gold, 88, 92, and 96. Kept on going in the sport, but he flew me down to Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, rented me a house, everything, and we trained together. Was that comfortable? No. You learned a lot, though. And it's funny, my son came up to me. He was a wrestler for Canada for a number of years. And I remember him saying to me, he goes, well, Dad, they got a name for you or something like that. And he goes, Bob Molle. And I go, what are you talking about? Well, don't you know what a Bob Molle is? And I said, I thought it was like a move I did or something like that. And they
Yeah.
go, no. And I said, what's a Bob Molle? He says, where you find out the number one person in the world and you go train with them,
Yeah.
because everybody used to train in their own country all the time. And I just went, I'd be in Cuba, I'd be in the States, I'd be in the Soup, but I wanted to learn from the best all the time, right? So it was that thirst for getting better all the time, I guess, that got me in the travels. And that was at a young age. So every time I got uncomfortable, I grew, right? And then all of a sudden, I'm the first person in 70 some years to have an Olympic medal in wrestling in Canada, and people wanted to know how I did it. But I was an unorthodox way that I went about it, right? And most people would stay in their own country, stay in their comfort zone. I'll train with my local people right here and now. You don't grow, right? You learn from so many people, right?
Well, people talk a lot now about how we are the average of the five people we spend time with. And I suppose if you were spending time, it, it would have been very easy for you to be in an environment where you were the best wrestler there. And but then it's good for your ego, but do you get better? No. And then you move to an environment where you're really, really challenged, and that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, so those that's kind of what led on to the book. It was every time I pushed myself. I studied in Eastern philosophy at a young age, and I just wanted to find out from Taoism or wherever that what was different in the Western world, kind of thing. And I remember my one of my mentors back in the day. I date myself quite a few years, and he actually came to me, and I threw a quote at him because he understood Taoism, and he went, and he was. I said, "What does that mean in English?" And he goes, "It means if you're going to grow, it means get comfortable being uncomfortable." And I went like in shock, right? And I go, "Oh, that's so me, right?" And everything connected the dots, and that's when I bought the trademark and I bought everything way back in the day of get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I pushed myself, and every time there was discomfort, I grew as a human being, right? So I never got scared of it. I always thought it was a time to grow, right? Um, I had some experiences like where everything doesn't go well, and you always say, I had a great coach, and I lost a big match one time, and he turned around and he walked by me, and it was embarrassing because it was packed, 15,000 people, and I was in the States, so a guy beaten all the time, and then he he walked by me slowly, stopped, kind of looked at me, and he goes, "When you lose, don't lose the lesson." I went, "Why?" It just stuck with me, right? And so I always thought every time I failed, what did you learn from it, right? And so that kind of propelled me too, right?
That's a great perspective when you lose, don't lose the lesson, because I think so many people, something they meet a challenge or something goes wrong in their life, and they go down the rabbit hole of self-criticism, of just digging into everything that went wrong, instead of going just twisting it and going, what can I learn? Now that's very easily said, and maybe not easy to do, but it's a huge perspective shift and just takes you on a whole different path.
Yeah, because people always read it, and you're going up to do a speaking engagement, Paul. People always hear about, oh, you did this. You're the only person in the world to have an Olympic medal and a Grey Cup ring and this and that and a Coach of the Year. And da, da. But they don't understand the failures to get there,
Yeah.
right? And so they don't announce them. So, welcome to that ebb and flow of life, right? Injuries, all the other things that come along with it. It's not a perfect world, and you're adjusting as we go along all the time, right? And I think that was a good perspective for me at a young age, 20, 21 years of age. That don't lose the lesson. What'd you learn from it? Okay, I won't do that again. I'm going to do this, this, and this. I go, and so it changed my direction of so many things in my life. Just learn the lesson, right?
It seems that in any challenge we face, if that could be the first question we ask ourselves, what's the lesson? Because I mean, your mind will find whatever you direct it to find. So if the question is, how did I fuck up so royally? Your mind will give you a list of reasons why you're an absolute ass, And if you go, well, what did I learn from this? Inherent in that question is, um, or should I say, within that question is the assuming there's going to be a next time, because I'm learning, I'm moving on, and there's the assumption that I will be better, fitter, stronger, faster, whatever it is, just more capable next time. Which means you're setting yourself immediately up for some degree of progress and success and development.
Yeah, and there was a lot of learned lessons along the way.
Mm.
Well, you start your own business, you start this, you start a. I remember. Uh, Starting out wrestling team, and I'm already, because I've got Olympic medal. I'm already playing pro football in Winnipeg, and I get drafted there. I moved to the city, and the university phones me up, and they said, "Bob, their team wasn't very good. Like, you had top 25 universities in Canada. We weren't even ranked in the top 25. Terrible team. In fact, they didn't even win a match. I don't think at the nationals. Let alone how bad they are. And they asked me if I'd take over. They'd take over the head coaching job, right? And when I took over the job at 25, so I'm the youngest coach in Canada by a long shot. Plus, I'm playing pro football. Plus, my wife was articling. That's not. That's just finished lawyer, and she was just starting out. Plus, we had a kid coming. You know what I mean?
It was all there.
Yeah. And I said, I'm going to take this on. And I remember phoning up my old head coach, who was my Olympic coach, Mike Jones. And I phoned him up and I said, hey, what do you think of this opportunity? You know what I mean? Me becoming the head coach and this and that. And I remember his exact words. He goes, Bob, and I think I'm just going to be a great coach and turn the team around. He goes, remember a couple words. He says, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. And I went, what? He says, you don't have the right people to win. You're not going to win with that team. You're going to recruit a whole new team. And I thought I was going to coach him into success. And he goes,
Yeah.
no, you still need good people, Bob. He said, you're going to have to recruit a whole new team in there. And that was a nice turning point in my life where I just go, oh, okay, get the right people on the bus. It was just such a turning point for me, and just recruiting top talent. In the first year, I think recruited all across the country, and then next year we came fifth. Then the year after we came third, and then we won a national championship. And people always go, "Wow, Bob, you're such a great coach." No, I'm an okay coach, but really
Yeah.
it was getting the right people on the bus, and that turned my consulting business around, because that's what I started doing, is picking the right people for spots for companies. And that elevated my consulting business for the last 25 years. I put teams together for companies. They go, this team isn't functioning very well, right? But one thing for sport just transferred into the business world perfectly.
But that's uncomfortable, because I mean, I've experienced that in business as well. And I've had that moment in my life as well, where I realized I want something different for the business, and I don't have the right people. And that's really, really difficult, because they're still human beings, they're still people. They may have been on the team a long time, they may have been in your business a long time, and you have to remove them. And that's some of the most uncomfortable stuff I did is just having to completely restructure a team. Um, but if you don't remove people who aren't a fit for the team culturally or don't have the talent or the drive, the team is just not going to go anywhere. I feel it's, I don't have experience in sport, but in business, I feel it's the starting point for anyone who wants to change their business to look and go, as you say, have I got the right people on the bus? Because if I don't, it doesn't. It really doesn't matter how if you're the best coach in the world. It doesn't matter. You're not going anywhere without the right people.
Yeah, and so it was a turning point, and that's what led on to my career. And look at now, coming 63, and companies phone me up, Bob, can you reorg this and can you that? This team isn't working very well. So doing the analytics, and that was another thing where sport just took me to another level, where um, the guy lost to an Olympic final, Bruce Baumgartner, and we didn't have internet or YouTube videos or anything, obviously, back then in '84. And I remember him going in a room in a little office, probably the size of mine, and he had VHS tapes like walls to walls of it, and every wrestler in the world. So here was, Turkey, here was Iran, here was this, here was China, here was this, and he had analytics on every single thing. And I remember he slowed me down. And he goes, Bob, we're going to review every person that we could possibly end up in the Olympics, and what three moves, because in wrestling it's one of the oldest sports in the world. And guess what we did? All we did was look at our top three moves we're going to do on every person, right? There's a million moves in there, a counter for every wrestling move too. And all we focused on, he said, Bob, match is over in 6 minutes. What three things are we going to do? That was it, three. And it really brought a sense for me, anyways, of just focus. Like we're only doing this, this, and this. And that's only three moves or that. So focusing on your strengths, and that's what I do with other people when I'm recruiting them or analyzing them. I find out what their strengths are, right? And then, well, I'm not very good at accounting. I'm not very good at this. I'm not worried about that. We're not hiring you for that. We want this, this, and this. And then that brought a new level for me to go where the person's going to fit. How are they socially, relationship wise, everything. I wanted to know what their strengths were. And that kind of propelled me into sports and the business and everything is really focusing on strengths. And that's what I analyze when I do it. I do a thing called Strength Finder. I can do the personality, and after an interview, I get a pretty good idea of what they're all about.
In that situation, when you're building a team like that, is there something specific? Are there specific traits you're looking for that stand out when you're building a great team? And you've been doing this for 25 years now or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What specifically are you looking for?
Well, depending on the job, see, at
Oh,
the time.
yes, yes.
So if I got a tech person, he socially, he's an introverted guy and he doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to communicate, doesn't want that, and he's cutting code all day and comes in at midnight and cuts code. I don't care, right? He doesn't want
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah,
doesn't want the social. He doesn't want anybody bothering him. And if he could just stand there and have a sandwich and just cut code all that, he's perfect for
yeah.
that job. But if I need a salesperson and he's in conflict all the time, I want a relationship person. I want two things to happen. I want him to like him, right? And trust him. And if those two things happen, I don't want them in their sales force, right? So I usually rebuild sales side, but I can do all that. But depending on what the job and what the criteria is, to what am I looking for, right? But I always think, especially most companies, it's kind of like the Pareto principle. It's the 80-20 rule, Paul, that, people are still 80% of it, they want revenue, right? And why isn't the revenue working? And they haven't managed relationships very well. So I look, that's probably the big one that sticks out for me. Can they develop and maintain relationships? When I talk to someone who's been, come on, you sit down and talk, they've already been married 3 times and it was her fault. As you peel back that onion, you start to cry a little bit more all the time. They don't manage relationships well, right? So I want people, I like to hear long-term relationships is what I like to hear on all that. Oh yeah, I still hang out with my buddies from high school and this and college. I got a group from this and wrestling team and football team and this and this and this. And you nurture those relationships. I had a
It,
great, go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go on.
I had a great mentor at the time, and I remember he told me about a thing, and we're talking about high order of thinking, and he talked about he called it relations, and I said, "You mean relationships?" And he goes, "Relations," and I said, "What does that mean to you?" And he said, "The ability to make new relationships and make existing ones better. I never forgot that. It was just like it stuck, you know what I mean? It's just like, are you making that relationship better? And are you always making new ones? And that was his definition from thousands of years ago in an Eastern philosophy about relations. And not too many people manage them well.
Well, it goes back to what you said earlier on about the Harvard study that went on for 80 years on happiness, and the secret of happiness came down to connection and relationships.
100%. What you hear that? Well, I would never been. And think about all the little domino effects that happen during that. You manage relationships because the guy I lost to in the Olympic final, I was training with him before the Olympics, and him and I got together, and he paid for everything. So you got the Olympic number one ranked guy in the world paying for my flight to go down to Oklahoma State, rented me a house, all the food, you know what I mean, and brought training partners together. And how many? If you didn't have a relationship, you wouldn't have had that. So that propelled me to the Olympic final, right?
Yeah.
Because if I wouldn't have trained him, so you think about how much relationships have affected my life. It's all about the relationships, right? How many people train with their number one, person that would be
Opponent.
your nemesis, right? Your opponent, right? Just uncomfortable and
And
just
what was the experience like of competing against him in the final? Then?
well, if you would have developed a better relationship, you would have let me win.
I think the nature of the of someone who's that competitive in sport is they may love you dearly, they don't let you win.
uh, I wouldn't have placed in the top two in the world without his training too. So I knew what propelled me to him. I'd lost to him in the Pan Am Games, the World Championships,
Yeah,
the World Cup. So it's not like I was only 21 years of age at the time. So I looked at the process of I wouldn't even have been there. Would I've liked to have beat him? Oh yeah, for sure. And
of course.
that didn't happen. But to me, the experience, getting on the podium at the time at 21 years of age, you know what I mean? Like I look back on my career, and I'm already had an Olympic medal. I had that, and then 2 years later, I had a Grey Cup championship in football. You know what I mean? It's been nothing but enjoyable for me, like the experiences
Yeah.
all the way around. And people always say, what propelled you to this and this? And I said, relationships. I got good relationships everywhere I go. I got people helping me. So it's never a bad thing.
So I'm reminded of a story of a family who arrived to this small town, and they're thinking of moving into it, and they seek out the local shaman, the local holy man, and they go, "We're thinking of moving into this village. Uh, what are the people like here?" And he says, "Well, tell me about the village you've come from. What were they like there?" God, they were awful people. They were miserable. They argumentative. We couldn't get on with anyone. That's why we left. He said, "Well, I'd advise you to move on because that's exactly what the people are like here." So
In
they
the
move
eyes
on
of
to the next. They move on to the next village, and of course, a couple of weeks later, a different family arrive up. They seek him out, and they say, "We'd like to move to your village. What are the people like here?" And he goes, "Well, what were they like where you came from?" "They were lovely people. There was we such deep friendships. We were so sorry to leave." He goes, "Well, welcome. That's what the people are like here." There's a lot of truth in that, really, isn't there?
all in the eyes of the beholder, right? It's just like my neighbors across the street. I'm in an acreage in Victoria, and our neighbors, two kids, would come running over across with that. We have dinner once in a while. But if they needed something, they just walk over the acreage and they got access to my kitchen if they're shopping because I travel for a month on end or something like that. It's just
Yeah.
we're giggling all the time back and forth. Just if he needs something, he's got the keys to my truck or what. You know what I mean? It's just part of the family, right?
Yeah, isn't it a great way to live? You certainly seem to have a great sense of fun, a great sense that you're really enjoying life, which is wonderful to see.
Yeah, I go back and I did an article where they're at now, and I said I got to pinch myself. So sometimes I've been so fortunate to be around such great people, and I got no complaints on that side of it. And even more positive, it's a good time because I had talked to you earlier about my wife being a judge. She's in another city, so she flies in on the weekends. We just came back from a month in Australia. Our daughter married an Aussie, so they just had their third child. So we got three grandkids over there, and I'm trying to still keep up with the first two of them, and I'm slowing down every year. And I fly back to Canada. We got another one, another my other kids having another grandchild next week. Which okay, let the games begin, right?
It's
Yeah, it's
full
going.
on, yeah.
Yeah, and Karen and I have been together met over 40 years ago, and we still enjoy life. We still giggle at each other, and when we do stupid things, we can laugh at each other and just enjoy our time together. And we travel quite a bit, quite extensively when we can. So hooking up with our grandkids and grandchildren and our children too at the same time.
Yeah, it's great to hear that spirit because so many people seem to struggle through life, but it's like it's like they're looking for the opposite. They're not looking for the opportunities for joy and fulfillment. They're looking for life to be. They're looking for life to deliver something negative to them, as opposed to seeking what excites them. But when you said, that that's what has driven you all your life, this sense of what excites you. What I'm just wondering about that is, and maybe this aligns up with this idea of getting comfortable being uncomfortable, because when you always pursue something that excites you, how do you persist with that? Because you don't win in the CFL, and you don't win Olympic medals by not persisting at something. How do you pursue something that excites you, but how do you persist with it?
Uh, Great question. And how do I persist at something? I always think about as simplest form is enjoy the process, right? So you think about, and it goes back, and I'm going to be like a broken record. The relationships, I had certain people that I weight training with, certain people I do this with,
Yeah,
and if you enjoy the relationships and you're laughing all the time and all the things that could happen in a competition, the travel and stuff like that.
yeah,
And there's something I call it second level in an Eastern philosophy. It's just referred to as gesture level. And do you create humor in that, or do you get negative, right? And guess what? I've had the option. Life's all about choices. You choose how to react to it, right? And your flight gets canceled. Oh yeah, well, let's go. Let's do
yeah,
something else, or let's go for a beer, or whatever. And I always played second level as jester, right? And so I could always play that, and the people I hang around with are usually pretty good at that too. So we could giggle at each other the whole time. And same thing with my wife too. It's the same thing. 40 years later, guess what we're doing? We're giggling all the time, right? We're laughing.
yeah,
Did you see what happened? And you have a choice to make that decision whether you're going to enjoy it, and is it all roses and stuff when you travel? Well, canceled flights, late flights. You know what I mean? You're in
yeah.
that little bog. You got to enjoy the process with it, right? So I think we do the pretty good job of just enjoying. It doesn't matter if it was training or whatever, sprinting up hills and going up and from in wrestling, one of the hardest sports in the world, and training. But enjoy the process, and I was pretty good at enjoying the process all the time, the training, every aspect of it, right? But if you have good people with it, guess what you're doing? You're laughing during it.
Yeah, I had a call with a young guy about a couple of months ago, and he was asking me some advice on business, and he was talking about what he wanted to do, and one of the things that struck me to say to him, because he's maybe 24 years of age, was to pursue something that he was really passionate about doing. And the reason I said that to him is because most people who become successful in anything are required to work hard or train hard and persist for a long amount of time. And it's very difficult to persist long enough to be successful if you don't love the process. If you don't love what you're doing or get up and enjoy it every day, it's very difficult just to stay in the game long enough to be successful and to get the result, the outcome you want.
Well, there's an old Eastern philosophy about that, and the Eastern philosophy that I studied, the quote goes, and I didn't make these up. They've been there for thousands of years. It was said, "No evolution without shock." So you won't change until you have some kind of shock. That
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
shock came at a young age, and as embarrassing as it happened to me, not public knowledge of that, but My shock came to me when I was in high school, and I can remember it like yesterday. And it was something so you'll giggle because you'll think it's so trivial. But it upset me at the time where I just said, I'm changing my life. And I played three sports, and I was a pretty good hockey player at the time. Football, we had a championship high school team, and wrestling, I was city provincial champion. I came third in Canada, and so I was the number one wrestler on the high school team too. And at the end of the year, they had an athlete of the year for the high school, and they actually announced that there were so many good athletes in the school that there was a tie. And I thought, well, there's a lot of great athletes. I got that, so I'm thinking I'm one of the people that's going to step up there and accept the award. They made the announcement, and there was two people. And don't get me wrong, good athletes, but I wasn't one of them.
Wow.
And so I was an athlete of the year, and I just went and I remember walking out of the high school and exact I remember to a T. And I'm 60 some years old, and I went, that will never happen to me again in my life.
Wow.
Exact words I said to myself when I walked out of that gym, and I was just on a terror the rest of the time. I would out train anybody, and that I said that's never going to happen. It was more just a recognition back in the day. And we're talking grade 12 when I was 17 years old.
But it was a great lesson. Or shouldn't, I'm going to rephrase that. You took a great lesson from it. You did exactly what you were advised many years later, was you took the pain, but you took the lesson.
Yeah, and what did come from it? I was, I out trained everybody, and that I was relentless in my training and stuff like that. And I said, that's never going to happen to me again. But there was that dip in life where you go, oh, I thought athlete of the year, and you think of something so trivial, but changed my life.
Well, Bob, if there's something to end on, then for me it is as follows: is that it's funny how successful you can be when you're willing to outtrain everybody else. How lucky you can become when you're willing to outtrain every other person. So well done. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Nice to meet
Thank
you.
you, Bob.